Hi, and welcome back to Postscript. I'm John Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and it's nice to have you back. We're coming to you from West Virginia, from the eastern panhandle of West Virginia, in our resort town of Berkeley Springs. And every month we bring together, the Arlington Institute brings together a speaker from somewhere around the world to talk about the extraordinary change that's going on in the planet. And I try to talk a little bit about that on December. And so today we're going to have a little chat about, from a professional futurist point of view, kind of how you think about the future, and particularly a time like this. And to help facilitate this conversation, my friend Gary Sycalik is with us, old futurist friend of mine from a long time ago, and we have ongoing conversations about these kinds of things. And so, Gary, welcome back.
Thank you. It occurs to me that a transition, as it were, from the previous session to now might be to begin with a focus on the truth of authority versus the authority of truth. And specifically, how we in this country are kind of educated to receive information when it comes from authoritative place, the expert, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so forth. And so this then affects how we look at change, how we look at the various scenarios.
Yeah.
And so would you speak to
sure.
that?
You know, we all have a problem. We only know what we think we know. I mean, we don't even know what we think we know. But I mean, everything that comes to us is a byproduct of some other people, some other place that have other kinds of agendas. I mean, the only thing I know that's real, that I think is real right now, is that you and I are sitting here in this studio talking to each other. I mean, I don't know anything that's going on in town or anything else. And if somebody comes and tells me that somebody got in a wreck or some of the things, that is, I have to believe them or not, because I'm not there. And so it's all kind of filtered by, this is the problem of history, by the way. It's all filtered by the communicator. And that may be just kind of common kind of problems of perspective, but it could be kind of engineered, and there may be agendas, and that's like the advertising or what other kind of business is all about, trying to shape the way you think about the world in one kind of way. And so this, you've got this problem, because you got to work in the space where, you know, all you see is what's in front of you. Anything else comes is shaped in one way or another, and now we know that even they can manipulate it all in such fundamental ways that you can't tell the difference between what really happened and what's fine. And so on one hand, you had this desperate need to kind of understand more about this giant kind of change that we're going to, and then at the same time, you're at a loss to know for sure what's real, because
Exactly.
And so what that drives you to, interestingly, in terms of the evolution of the species and individuals, is to try to find another source for authority other than the experts or the institutions or the publications or the what other kind of thing that we, through this period of time, we have used as the basis for deciding what is real and how you make decisions. And that process, it seems to me, is this kind of evolution and driving humanity up from this kind of 3D, linear, logical, kind of scientific kind of notion, up into this larger, multidimensional kind of space, to where that connects, by the way, to the larger amount of knowledge and information that exists in the whole kind of universe.
Yeah, so we're constantly seeking to enhance our discernment.
Well, right. But that is a function. Discernment is a function of where you stand. Where are you in terms of what are you kind of trying to look at, and if you're trying to discern from kind of conventional kind of sources, then you're going to get the best kind of perspective of limited by what the inputs are that you've chosen. If, on the other hand, and this is an argument for kind of refining the process of intuition, if you can get into this other kind of space where the database of all that is essentially kind of resides, and you can start to figure out the mechanism, the internal kind of way in which you can access those kind of answers to those kinds of questions, and they don't come through these external kind of ways. This is, by the way, the essential kind of component aspect of this evolution of humanity right now. The question is whether it's an external or an internal kind of orientation, because what you have is two divergent kind of flows, and one of them is moderated and defined by technology and all of these kind of notions that say these external kind of tools and processes and everything will tell you. They will integrate directly into your brain. They will send little nanobots up into your brain and connect you to the cloud, and then you'll know. It's this notion that reality and information is in this external kind of space. The other alternative, and this is what I think is the essence of this evolutionary kind of push, is this notion of how do you develop and access and what's essentially who we are and what we are. And that, if you can move yourself into that space and find that space, and what it allows you to do is get these answers, this intuitional kind of flash, you ask this question. I'm convinced, for instance, that at any kind of given decision point in your life, that you always know what the answer is. If you listen to it, it'll always show up. And what happens with most of the time throughout my life, I ignored this stuff. I didn't think about it. That's stupid. People don't do that. Whatever. Well, you get all these kind of reasons. And suddenly there's an operating space that you can get into where you suddenly start to float. You cruise into the space where all these answers, and you just believe them, and you just go. And by the way, it just really works out really kind of nice, and you don't have to sweat all kinds of things that other people, and worry about things that a lot of other people worry about. And it's really different because it's all an internally oriented kind of operation that says that who we are, our consciousness, we have everything that we need. It's just this development and accessing it that gives you the substance to be able to move into this new space and then operate essentially almost exclusively from that place. On the other side, what the case you can make is that all of the efforts of technology and technology development are trying with mechanical kind of tools to provide, to allow you to do the things that you can do yourself.
Exactly.
And so, it's a really kind of an interesting kind of thing. But the problem on this side, of course, is that you can manipulate all that stuff and you can shape it all.
Right, and there's money to be made there.
Oh my, yes, of course.
Yeah.
And so this is what's really quite exciting to me about this whole kind of transition business, is because it is, when you say new human, I mean, that's just words that go by most people's head. But if you kind of think about it, this is an emergence of a new human that operates in this broader kind of space. And as you and I know, that because we talk about it, I think that, there's aliens and other life forms and other kind of stuff that are all in this space who have all figured out how to operate in those larger kind of dimensions.
Yeah. So essentially, we have two possibilities going here. One is movement into the cyborg trend and the trajectory.
Yeah.
And the other one has to do with going back and tapping the inner part that we have as a spirit being.
Yep.
And that the conscious awareness that exists there is expanded, and then we have the ability to focus that conscious awareness around a particular question or around a particular subject. And as you point out, it's really ironic that we have this ability inside ourselves, yet we're trying like crazy to create this externally. And part of it is being driven by the experts and the moneymakers. So in terms of where we're going with that, what comments do you have about that?
You know, in the professional futures business, people have, tried to think about structural ways to think about these kinds of things for some time. And what we've come up with, the group in that space, is that scenarios and scenario planning is the most effective way. You cannot be predictive in hard kind of terms. What you know from chaos theory and any number of other kind of things is that there are any number of decisions, very small decisions, that can be made in the process of going down a track that can drive the ultimate end into quite different kind of ways. And that can happen right up next to somebody can make a decision before some bigger major event that is almost certain to happen, and it won't happen. And so there's no way to predict all of those kind of multitude of different kind of ways. And so what you need to do is, in a systematic way, start to say, how do I build scenarios of alternative futures and build those based upon some fundamental kind of structural and rigorous kind of process where you choose the scenarios or the basic scenario structure based upon things that are fundamentally important to you or me or whoever it is that are building the scenarios. And in the business, we call those critical uncertainties because they are both critical and they are uncertain. And in the fact that they're uncertain means that they could go one way or another. And when they go this way, you get in one world, and if you go this way, you get another world. And so they are the hinge points in history. And so you could say that an election, for instance, and if you get a new president, it could go this way, or the policies could go or the other way. Or, climate change. Does it get warm or does it get cold? I mean, because it makes a whole lot of difference. And so you can build scenarios and go through a process. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. And for my, in terms of kind of this discussion, what I've been thinking about is that there are kind of three basic kind of evolutionary kind of scenaric paths that are in the space that have multiple sources that could suggest that the possibilities of any one of these things happening. And one of them is that that there are these waves of energy that are coming out of the center of the galaxy, some of which, if they're the same, if everybody's talking about the same waves, science is already seeing these things that are coming out of the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and they have a lot of influence, and they influence all the stars and stuff as they come by, and it influences our sun. And the presumption is, and there are all kinds of sources, ancient sources and others, that suggest that it changes who human beings are, and this is the kind of the source of the evolutionary impulse that kind of gradually, relatively speaking, it's an evolutionary kind of process. You get these multiple waves. People change who they are. They change how they see the world. They change physiologically and kind of consciously or spiritually, if you will. And so the new capabilities kind of begin to show up, like telepathy and any number of other kind of stuff like that. And so that this transitional kind of process is kind of a gradual evolutionary one, and what you just need to do is kind of engage in the process and stay with it, and over time kind of a new world emerges. And so that's, so that's one scenario. And I mean, these are just not crazy ideas people brought. I mean, I've got all kinds of sources of different, that confirm this kind of possibility. There's another one, interestingly enough, David Wilcock, there's a variety of people who have done a great deal of work around this, suggests that there's energy that's, and the solar system moving into a different kind of cloud, a different energetic cloud. It affects the sun, and what the sun and what we're seeing is out in front of us is that the stars that are into this new energetic field presumably accrete great amounts of energy, and they have solar flashes, and they have little novas, micronovas, mini novas, whatever you want to call it, but it's a huge amount of energy that they put off. 23 stars in the leading area in the last 2 years have these flashes. And so there are multiple sources that suggest that within the next 7 years that our sun is going to do something like that. The last time they did it, something like this, it was in 1858, I think it was, the Carrington event, and then there was a big flash, but we didn't have all the infrastructure and all of the kind of dependencies and all of the electronics and other things that we have right now. If something like that would happen, then what it would do would have a huge effect on whatever the side of the Earth that was facing the sun, and it would clearly in economic and other social kind of terms have a huge kind of a body blow to the whole system. And the question is, in terms of this evolutionary process, are the kind of the leading edge group of kind of New Worlder folks, where do they play in terms of the sequence of when that happens? Do they move somewhere else? Do they go to a different dimension? Do they, whatever it turns out to be. The third scenario, which is kind of a variation on the second one, and again, I mean, there's multiple kind of sources that all kind of say the same thing, and that is that that there are that human life is a product of eons. I mean, of interaction with extraterrestrial life, who have helped to nurture and seed, and in some cases maybe even manipulate the DNA to adjust us to be able to live effectively on this planet. And they have a vested interest in this whole evolutionary kind of process. It's kind of like their job, right? To kind of get this new planet going. And presumably other people are doing it, other groups are doing it in lots of other kind of places. And that's part of this whole kind of evolutionary process in the universe. And so these guys have a vested interest in all of us. And so they want to make sure that this moves into a new kind of space. Now, the trick, again, has to do with this solar flare business, and whether the problem, by the way, with solar flares, it generates a great deal of fear, right? Obviously, because something like that happens and it drives everybody down the Maslow hierarchy down into the lower levels of trying to just kind of sustain yourself. But there's an amazing amount of information that says that there's all these alien groups, and they're sitting there waiting, and they essentially have the job that before the flare comes, they come and grab the New World people, the guys that are on the leading edge, who are going to carry them off and to a new world, to a new planet that exists somewhere on the other far side of the universe. That is a whole lot like this, and like this planet works like this, but they don't have any war and they don't have other kind of things. And if you're like me, you kind of go, "Are you kidding?" I mean, that's weird. That's at best, that's weird. And then you run into friends like my friend Penny Kelly, who's been a speaker at our transition talks, and she says, "Oh yeah, I've been to that planet 4 times. They've taken me off there into my dreams." And I mean, she's a psychic and an intuitive, and she travels all over the place. I mean, I've met 3 people now who have told me, "Oh yeah, I've been to that planet." It's out there. They asked me if I wanted to stay. And again, you got to do this permeability business, and you start to say, wait a second, maybe they didn't tell me about this one, you know? And so I don't know. I mean, and that's kind of the bottom line of all this, but there's all these kind of possibilities, and it's going to be an amazing kind of ride, I think. I mean, the next...
So many probable realities.
Yeah, I know. Well, we're out of time. We're out of time again. I'm sorry, but it's been fun to have you here and talk and discuss some of this stuff. Thank you, and we'll do it again next year, I presume.
Look forward to it.
Something like that. And thank you for being with us again. It's always nice to have you come and sit in on these little discussions that we have with different people. This is an amazing time, extraordinary kind of change that's coming downstream, and it kind of flies on the face of a lot of the conventional wisdom that we've all come with, and offers us the opportunity, this evolutionary kind of opportunity, to move into some new space and to redefine ourselves in new kind of ways. And so that's what we're all about here at Transition Talks. And you can find out about us at transitiontalks.org. And you can come back, and we'll do another one of these in January after the holidays. And we hope you'll come and be with us. And so I'm John Petersen, and from the Arlington Institute. And I hope you have a wonderful, happy holidays.